episode number 55.
And I just kept seeing patterns repeat themselves for women in the workplace. And I got to a point, I think 2014 it was, and I just thought, I was mentoring a young woman at work, and she got a first class honours degree in law, and she was saying some of the same things that I'd been hearing for sort of 20 plus years about the things that men were, particularly older, more senior men, were sort of saying to her and treating her. I just thought, you know what, I should do something about this. It's really getting on my nerves. And because when you're older, you get much bolder and you stop caring about what anyone else thinks. So I just thought, you know what, I'm gonna do something about this. And I remember talking to my husband and saying, should I do it? And he said, you know, if not you, who? And I just thought, well, yeah, I'm in a position to do it, so I'm going to do it.
Hi, you're listening to the Careers Beyond Motherhood podcast with your host, Janine Esbrand. I'm here to help working mums like you to thrive in your careers and in motherhood. I share tips, strategies, and inspirational conversations with awesome women to help reduce the struggle in your juggle.
Time for a say, Mummy.
And welcome to the show. I am super excited to be back with you again today and talking about a really important topic, which is empowering women in the workplace. We can work really hard to find the right role and secure the right role and negotiate the right flexibility and get in and start working. But often people are faced with some real challenges in terms of workplace culture and the way that people respond to you as a working mum and the way that they respond to you as a woman in general. I'm excited to be diving into this topic with an amazing woman. She is an expert on this topic. She lives and breathes gender diversity and is all about women's rights. And I can't wait for you to hear all that she has to share with us. So Natasha Stromberg is the founder of Genderbuzz, and she's also a female empowerment and gender equality activist. And she has had so many conversations about this topic. And it's just such an important topic. I'm sure you've probably experienced some gender bias in your career, and it's great that Natasha is going to be sharing some real practical tips for individual women who want to stand up for themselves when they encounter sexism in the workplace. And we also talk about some of the different challenges that women from ethnic minority backgrounds face and how we should be addressing that. So without further ado, let's jump into my conversation with Natasha.
Hi, Natasha. Thank you so much for joining us today. Can you introduce yourself and tell the audience a bit about you?
Yeah, hi, Janine. I'm Natasha Stromberg, and I run an online platform called Genderbuzz. I've been running that for about 2 years now, 2.5 years actually, and it's a platform for female-led businesses, a place where we can all find each other online and kind of show what we're selling, services and some products. It's mainly a services based platform, but I've been doing that for about 2.5 years. I'm also a female empowerment and gender equality activist. I do lots of work with women's networks and sort of not political organisations, but really raising the profile of gender equality. I've been interviewed on the radio and appear in magazines talking about such things as gendered language and how we are going to move to a gender equal society and how that is going to be so much better for everyone.
Oh, that is so awesome. I'm so close to my heart, like all of those topics, and the fact that our audience is made up of mainly women who are mothers and maybe looking at transitioning back to work after maternity leave. All of the stuff around like equality is really important. What led you to this place? So I know that you started your career in finance. So what led you to here?
Well, I say this, I've always been a feminist. I've always believed in equality for women, even as a child. I was very studious as a child. I always knew that I wanted to be a businesswoman from a young age, actually. And I was brought up by feminist parents, really. My dad was a feminist, so was my mum. And I just remember thinking, how great women and girls were, and if I ever encountered any sexism, which I didn't too much in the 70s and 80s when I was growing up, but I just always believed that women were awesome, and I would never take sort of no for an answer of what I could and couldn't do because of my gender. And actually, interestingly, I was talking to my mum about this, in the 70s, it was quite a gender neutral decade. Now, I'm sure most of the people on your podcast are younger than me, but we didn't have all of this pink, blue stuff. And that really came around in the 80s when marketing really went sort of, through the roof with Disney and all of that sort of branding stuff. I was just always a feminist, really. And I think as I started my career in the city, I was always quite bold, but I did come up against, I always thought my opportunities would be equal. And it's hard to put your finger on sexism and institutional sexism, which is really what it is. And I just kept seeing patterns repeat themselves for women in the workplace. And I got to a point, I think 2014 it was, and I just thought, I was mentoring a young woman at work, and she got a first class honours degree in law, and she was saying some of the same things that I've been hearing for sort of 20 plus years about the things that men were, particularly older, more senior men, were sort of saying to her and treating her. I just thought, you know what, I should do something about this. It's really getting on my nerves. And because when you're older, you get much bolder and you stop caring about what anyone else thinks. So I just thought, you know what, I'm gonna do something about this. And I remember talking to my husband and saying, should I do it? And he said, if not you, who? And I just thought, well, yeah, I'm in a position to do it, so I'm going to do it.
Amazing. I love that. Because sometimes often, people will say like, this is an issue, but then don't take that ownership to say, well, I can actually contribute to the change and I can make a difference, even if it's making a difference to one person. So moving forward and making that difference is awesome. What are some of you said that you work with some women's networks and you're kind of, getting your message out there. What have you found to be the areas where people are kind of saying, yeah, actually, we do need to make that change within organisations particularly? Are you finding people are receptive?
I mean, obviously working with other women, they all want change. And I think it's the number one thing is cultural change. And it's about changing the environment at work to make it female friendly. I mean, what we need to understand as men and women is that the workplace was, even the modern workplace was built by men for men when women were not in the workforce. We need to admit that and say, look, the workforce is still a legacy situation from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and even the 80s, when women moved into the workforce in the 70s and 80s in huge numbers. But the workplaces they moved into were not created by them or for them, because until then women were working in the home. So I think this cultural change is hard to move. And you've got this at the top and the layer below the top, where things do not move. And I think women feel very despondent when they look up and see the same faces and just think, that's not me. I don't see myself in that. I don't see a man or a woman that that represents me. And I think it's that again and again comes back to, this cultural change in the workplace and this inclusiveness. Yes, women do make up 50% of the workforce now, but they're not included in big decision, the big decision making, the real financial decision making in any great numbers. So I think that is very frustrating, particularly, when women have got, hugely technical abilities. It's just really very frustrating. And the other thing is the lack of flexibility around working hours. It literally drives women nuts, because what we don't see is we still are not seeing a large amount of shared parenting in Britain. We do in other countries, but women still are doing the majority of the parenting. So, and having full-time jobs and not getting that flexibility. And I think it makes it so difficult and frustrating for talented women to move forward.
Yeah, and I think the statistic around, the shared parental leave and how many people are taking it up, I think it's just 1% in the UK since it came in as an option. And I think that the mindset around it needs to change from the male perspective as well. So I think that a lot of men are thinking, well, are they going to be seen as being not committed to their career if they take up shared parental leave? But I actually saw a post today on LinkedIn, and there was a guy who just had a baby, him and his wife just had a baby, and he was sharing that Microsoft, who he works with, gave him 6 months paternity leave. And he was talking about how he can't imagine not having that time with his child and having that opportunity to bond with his child and go into parenthood, having spent that time with his baby and his wife. And I was just saying, like, it's great if organizations can recognize the importance for men as well to be involved in their children's lives. Like the whole idea that it's just the mother, it takes two people to make a baby, so why should it just be the mother who wants to spend time at home with their child?
Well, I think this generation of parents have grown up, maybe sort of the under 30s, in an environment where equality is all around them. I've been watching a great programme called Back in Time for School. I don't know if you watched it on the BBC. And it's so interesting. They've been back to the Victoria. They've got modern school pupils going back to the Victorian era and the Edwardian era, and this sort of idea about gender. And it's so, they don't accept it. They just don't accept that those gendered roles could even exist for them anymore, and they're 14 or 15. And the fact is that generation of people just will not fall into those gendered roles that maybe my generation did. And there will be a massive cultural shift. I think in Britain, we underestimate how conservative our society is. We are a conservative society. You look at places like Germany, the Nordic countries, obviously famously, but even some African countries where, there are matriarchal cultures where, the woman is the one who is the head of the family. And, in Britain, we have not, in my opinion, moved from that. We idolise that 1950s sort of housewife at home, and we're still not fully accepted that women can be the main breadwinners, and we need to make a massive cultural shift as a society. And I think examples like that, the man you talk about, are really important. I think personal examples really home. Men need to play their part, and they want to play their part. If they've got a wife or a partner who's earning, has got a great job and is earning good money, then why wouldn't they say, okay, right, you do that, I'll do the childcare. We must accept that, and as women also, we must not devalue the men who do that.
Yeah.
Very important that we play our part as women, not to devalue a caring man and just expect, if on one hand we want to be highly successful women, we can't devalue the qualities of a man that maybe isn't as ambitious as us. We have to say those are very valid qualities in a man as well, and respect that. I think, both sexes have got work to do to come together. It is happening. Honestly, I can see a massive shift. I am in this day in, day out on social media. I see what's happening, even just through things like Instagram and Twitter. I can see the conversations. The mood is shifting. And I think there are a declining number of people now who don't think gender equality is good for them and their families. In fact, you'd be hard pushed to find anyone under 50 who thought it was a bad idea.
Yeah, which is great. I think you're right. The mood is changing, and so I guess for people who are still feeling as though in their organisation things are not shifting as much as they would, what would you say would be, like, I guess, a strategy for people? Because I think that when you have people at the top who are used to doing things how they do things, what is the incentive for them to change their kind of approach or their viewpoint? How can people kind of show the necessity for organisations to be more flexible, do you think?
Well, there isn't a lot of incentive, is there, if you're at the top and you've got from the status quo? What is the incentive for you to change the status quo if you benefit from it, unless you're a very enlightened person? Now, there are enlightened leaders. I think the gender pay gap figures are a game changer. The the idea now that women can ask what at interview, what is your, and women are, there's lots of evidence to show that women are going to interviews and saying, what is your gender pay gap? And say you've got a similar off table, let's take finance, that's the area that I work in, have worked in for a long time. And you've got one company, I mean, HSBC would publish their gender pay gap yesterday, it was 61%. And you've got another similar sort of investment bank with a gender pay gap of 45%, then you are going to be able to make an informed choice as a woman at the beginning, or to, mid-career, to say, do you know what, this organisation isn't for me. This gender pay gap is not going anywhere. And actually, the bank next door has got a gender pay gap that is 20 points less. We're not stupid. We can see that the culture is not supportive of female advancement. And I think that data gives women a very strong indication of what that culture is like. I mean, in terms of when you're at a company and you're enjoying being at that company as a woman, I've always been very outspoken. I call out sexism. I generally, obviously, as I've got older, I do get treated as an equal because I just won't stand for anything else. And I think that is something, it takes confidence and it takes experience, but I think it is important for women, if they can, to show that they won't stand for any kind of, not even, I mean, overt discrimination is much, much less. But, questioning why aren't there any women in the management team? It's absolutely fine and okay to ask your boss, well, I'm not seeing any women in the management team. Why is that? At your yearly review, your 6-monthly review. I mean, it is strange if there are no women in management. So, you've got to kind of voice these opinions and these worries, if to no one else, to your direct manager, I would say, and just say it in a way, say, it does concern me. I'm not sure if my future's here when I don't see that. It's okay to say these things. Yeah. And to expect an answer.
This episode is brought to you by The Collective, which is our monthly membership community for ambitious women who want to continue to build their careers whilst raising a family. Now, once you've had a baby, things might change for you. Once you become a mum, you might be thinking differently about your career, and negotiating what you want can be tough. So within this community, we'll help you to figure out where you want to go with your career and how you could get there. So whether you are switching direction, whether you want to build on what you've already developed in your career thus far, whether you want to launch your own business, we are there to support you step by step, providing the tools, the guidance, the coaching, and the community that you need to move boldly towards the career that you want. So if you're interested in joining an awesome group of women as you navigate the highs and lows of your career beyond motherhood, then head over to lightboxcoaching.com/collective-waitlist and get your name on the list so that I can let you know when the doors will be opening again. We would love to have you join us. Okay, now back to my conversation with Natasha.
Yeah, I think you're totally right that women need to speak up more and stick up for themselves, I guess, in situations. I guess it doesn't necessarily come natural to all women, but I think that if you don't ask, you don't get. And so it is important for us to be bold in situations. And sometimes you might be the first person, so it's not always about you. It can be about the people that come after you, in terms of, if you can be the woman that speaks up and the policies get changed, then there's other women that are going to benefit from that as well.
I mean, I agree. I see it as someone who is an experienced person, an experienced woman in the workplace. I see it incumbent on me and people of my generation to raise our voices, because we are in a position of greater power, because we've got more experience, we've got more skills, we've got more marketable skills, we've got more experience. And I think when you're younger, you don't have that bank of security. I have a bank of security and I've got 20 years experience and expertise. So, people do listen to what I have to say. And I think it is incumbent upon women such as myself to pay it forward for younger women who may not feel as confident saying these things. But, saying that, I meet some really confident younger women and I'm very admiring of them. So, if you are a confident person, then say it. But I would say to women who are experienced in the workplace, it's on us to help younger women. We must do that, and we must speak out. And I do it all the time. I don't care.
Yeah, I love it. And that goes to something I wanted to ask you about as well, in the idea of looking at the people that aren't necessarily exactly like you. So whether they're younger than you or they're a different race to you, and really trying to understand things from their perspective. So I saw that you put a post recently about your commitment to kind of doing more with women of colour and understanding what their challenges are, because there's different layers to it. So me as a Black woman, I have challenges in the perspective of being a woman, but then also an ethnic minority. And I was just really, I really admired the fact that you're saying, actually, I want to understand that group of women and their challenges more. So what kind of led you to take that stance?
I mean, I think I've seen, feminism move forward, and I've seen some women in the workplace achieving, and I would say this is true in the Western world. But what I've seen is mainly white women of a certain class achieving those positions. They have been let through the door, and I can see that it's easier for me than some of the women of colour that I work with. It just is, because I'm a more acceptable face of feminism, or whatever you call it. I've been around sort of in that sphere for longer. So the doors open more for me. I can see, I've worked with women of colour, I've seen how people speak to them. Not, again, these are subtle things that people say which put people in silos or in boxes, which are based on random things like ethnicity or gender. And I can see that I am a beneficiary of a system of a patriarchal system, because we've got, in the Western world, we've still got white men holding the majority of positions of power, white women underneath that, and then women and people of colour below that. And I don't feel that, I am a passionate feminist, and I cannot be a feminist without being a feminist for all women. It can't just be a select group of wealthy white women having jobs that wealthy white men had. That's not what feminism is about. It is about equality. And I've just expanded my network. Do you know what? I read June Sarpong's diversity book, and one thing she said was, how many women of colour or people of colour have you got in your network? Now, I actually do have quite a few in my network, because I've joined quite a lot of women's networking associations. But I thought, how many friends of colour have I got? How many close friends of colour have I got? Now, I actually have got a couple, but, 5 years ago, I had none. So I had to say to myself, well, look, you need to open your mind and open, just in your personal life, in your professional life, and broaden your network and hear what other women are coming up against. It can't, like I said, again, I'm in a position of privilege, so I need to be using that privilege to listen to what other people are experiencing and help them. So I think it's really seeing the injustice of that, and knowing that I have a position of privilege to, in a small way, to help that. I mean, I don't know how much I can help, but I'll do everything I can. And like I say, feminism to me is not about wealthy white women running the world. It's about us all, and we will not rise as women. We will not, really dismantle a patriarchal system, which I think is so outdated and makes people very unhappy, men and women, unless all women rise. And I think that's very, very key that it's an inclusive movement. So, I mean, I just thought it can't be all people like me getting all the all the advantages. Really.
Yeah, I love it. I really admire that. And I actually listened to a Facebook Live that is done on a weekly basis by Jada Pinkett Smith, so Will Smith's wife, and she does that Red Table Talk.
Yeah,
and she did one recently on race, and she had, like, her producer of the show came on, she was a white woman, and then she had her mum, who's a black woman, and they were just talking about, the fact that they don't necessarily understand the other race and the struggles they go through because they don't necessarily have those people in their network. So Jada's mum was talking about how she feels a certain way about white women, and it's not necessarily because of a particular woman, but it's because of the experiences that she had. So I think it goes both ways. I think it's important for us to, as black women, to look at our network and say, how many friends do I have who are of different ethnic backgrounds, and you as well? Because if we understand each other more, then we can fight for each other more, because you understand, what the unique struggles are. So I think that's great.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. It does work both ways. And there are people, unfortunately, in the world who are against gender equality. And what those people, bad actors, I call them, will do is they will capitalise on any divisions within the female population. So they will use race as a divider. They will use class as a divider. And I'm not having any of that. I'm like, no. We are all stand together on this one issue. So I think it's so important for women of all ethnicities to say, right, we don't really care if someone's white or black. We stand together. And I think once we do that, we will crack this nut. We can, but we must sort of put those. And class is another thing as well.
Yeah.
A lot of feminism is seen as quite elitist, but it is not. I mean, the thing is that feminism really benefits everybody, but there is a lack of outreach to working class women in feminism, and I see there's quite a backlash against feminism within those groups.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. One of the things I wanted to ask you about as well is, in this movement that you have and all that you're advocating, and then obviously setting up your platform that you have, what are some of the challenges that you face? Because I know that there's often women out there who want to do big things and they want to do great things, but they kind of shy away from taking the bold step and moving forward. So can you share a bit of, background around any challenges you faced and how you've overcome that with where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, any entrepreneur will say, you have to start small, like really small. Entrepreneurialism really is just an idea in your mind, which then becomes executed into something practical. And honestly, this is a cliche, but I did start Genderbuzz or the very seeds of Genderbuzz with a presentation on my Apple Mac in my spare room. I wrote it. I just wrote it. It was called Smart Woman Inc. And it was all about how we're going to do now. And I just wrote this kind of slideshow. And that was the very beginning. Everyone thought I was nuts. I had a great career in finance. And, I thought, what have I done? This is ridiculous. I'm sitting, a couple of months ago, I was at some meeting in Brussels, and now I'm sitting in my bedroom, doing this PowerPoint thing with downloaded things from Shutterstock. But, it's ridiculous. But I think if you start small, you do hear a lot, particularly from America, and I think it's really important for British entrepreneurs to understand we are not the United States. So we do not have a market of 300 or 400 million English-speaking customers at our disposal. So it's much harder in Britain to find a market for your product, because there's just fewer people who want it. So I think, these ideas about going global, etc., that's great. But I think that, and I meet a lot of female entrepreneurs from the States, fortunately. I do. I'm in contact with them. And, I think when we get these messages, or you can go global, I think just start kind of where you are. I mean, most of my contacts are in London and Greater London. That's where I live. I've only just started branching out into Northern England. So, and I've been going for 2.5 years. So I think it takes a lot longer than you might think. And all of these ideas about going global, it puts a lot of pressure on you. actually, it's a slow process. I mean, I cannot tell you how many tweets I've done, how many posts I've done on LinkedIn. I mean, it takes forever.
Yeah, it totally does. And I think my experience personally has been that, like, it takes time, but bit by bit, and you're kind of stacking, like every small thing that you do is a victory, and to celebrate that, and not to think, I've got my vision of where I want to go, and then because you're not getting there quick enough that you're not doing a good job. Actually, you're making an impact as you go, and with the people that you connect with and that you inspire and that you work with. So I think that's a really good message.
Even if you go from, I remember posting things on LinkedIn, it had 1 or 2 views. Now I am getting 1,000+ views on a post, but that's taken 4 years.
Yeah.
That's the reality. It's taken 4 years. So I think give yourself a pat on the back if you go from, 2 likes to 20 likes on a post, or 20 views to 200 views. These are simple steps you can take to show that, to see that the engagement is moving up. I met those challenges. Not as many people signed up to my platform as I'd hoped. Some people didn't really, see what the point was. I'm up against big platforms like Facebook and Instagram that have hugely deep pockets, massively funded platforms. I'm self-funded, I'm just an entrepreneur. These are big problems. But if you do something you believe in, you do in the end kind of, it's like a constant hurdle race, really. That's all I can say.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love to share inspirational quotes with my listeners because I love to hold on to great sayings. Is there one that you'd like to share with everybody?
Well, you can, on my Instagram, I'm always posting things from Oprah, because Oprah Winfrey is one of my inspirations for, I think, finding my inner strength to be able to say some of the things that I now say. And I think probably most importantly, her message to be authentic. I think many women, myself included, have hidden our power for a very long time because we fear the backlash and the societal judgment of being a powerful woman, because it's still there. Yeah. And I'm always inspired by Oprah because, in America, I do think women are more outspoken, and I really like that. I really like American women. And I remember of all the times I've sort of reflected on things like, maybe that person doesn't like me. I wonder why they never got in touch with me, or I kind of started doing business with someone and got not a great feeling about it. And I remember the Oprah quote, and she says it a lot. Remember, people show you who they are, and she had the first time. And I think that's really true. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt, but I think trusting your own intuition and instinct as you move through business is really important. And just being observant about people do show you who they are through their actions, and you make a decision based on that. It's not about what you tell people or you inflate things or whatever. If someone says, I'm going to write a review for you on Amazon, and doesn't do that, then they show you who they are. They're not going to support you. If someone says they'll retweet a post and they don't, small things. I think you have to really be not ruthless, but you have to be quite brutally honest with yourself when you're running your own business and say, that person has shown me who they are. They don't respond to my emails. I need to move on. And I think you can be quite hurt at the beginning when you first start your business, but in the end, you
get used to it.
You get used to it. You get used to no's. You get used to, and I think that quote has stood me in good stead from Oprah. I mean, look at her.
Yeah, exactly.
Really,
she's amazing. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
So if people want to hear more about Genderbuzz, learn more about the platform and all that you're doing, where's the best place to direct them to?
Well, if you're on social media, I am quite active on social media. In a professional setting, I post a lot on LinkedIn. I do all my own posts. We have a company page, Genderbuzz, on LinkedIn, and you can follow my personal feed, Natasha Stromberg, on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. I have a Twitter account where I tweet, sort of about all my passions, really. I'm also a very keen animal rights advocate, so I tweet about that a lot. And more political things to do with women in politics. And then my Instagram account, I've got some cool videos on there. I kind of try and keep my social media appropriate for the audience. But if you type in Genderbuzz, Genderbuzz Official on Instagram, Genderbuzz on LinkedIn, and Genderbuzz on Twitter, you'll find me there.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to put all of those links in the show notes. So if anyone wants to find you, they can head to the website and get those. So.
And if you want to list your business, which is really what it's all about, it's about women buying services from each other and showcasing the brilliant businesses that women are running. Go to genderbuzz.com, list your business, I'll promote it, and it's free. Do that.
Oh, it's been so great chatting to you today, Natasha. Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
I absolutely love speaking to action takers. I love speaking to people that go beyond the complaints and actually think about ways that they can make a difference to the problem that is getting them so fired up and getting them so annoyed. And so it's great to hear that Natasha decided to take a stand and say, okay, if not me, then who is going to use my influence and my position to actually make a difference to other women that are coming up behind me. So I hope you feel encouraged and inspired by this. You don't have to make the biggest difference in the world, but everybody can make a difference to at least one person. So think about how you can be encouraging, how you can be inspiring, how you can be just making a difference to those around you. If you want to connect with Natasha, learn more about Genderbuzz and all of the amazing work that she's doing, then head over to the show notes at lightboxcoaching.com/episode 55, and you will be able to grab the links that you need to connect with her. And speaking of connecting, I love to connect with the listeners of this show and hear about you and how the topics that we talk about are relevant to you in your life. And so I'd love for you to come and join us in our Careers Beyond Motherhood community, which is hosted on the Mighty Networks platform. So you can head over to Careers Beyond Motherhood podcast.M for mother, N for November.co and join us there, because each week after the podcast goes live, we will be continuing the conversation over there. So I'd love to have you join us. The link will be in the show notes at lightboxcoaching.com/episode 55. So you can check it out along with Natasha's links. So that brings us to the end of this episode. It's been great hanging out with you, and I look forward to speaking to you again in the next one. Until then, look after you and look after your babies. This podcast features music from Sound.